Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. I am your family member and temporary host, James Peter, and today I bring you a very powerful prayer for my beautiful family. But before that, I have a request and a heartfelt complaint. My family, please don't judge a story too soon. Don't decide in the first chapter that the story isn't good or that the girl is poor and innocent. Tell me, in which story of mine has a cruel man won and an innocent and righteous person lost? Never. When you watch a Hollywood movie, do they tell you at the beginning how it will end? No. You watch the whole movie to experience the full journey. So, why judge my stories before watching them completely? When you leave a story midway and comment without knowing the full journey, it truly hurts me. I welcome criticism, but only after you've watched the full story. My beautiful family, I put my heart and soul into these stories for you, and all I ask is for your patience and trust. Now, are you present? Let me know in the comments. A powerful prayer for my beautiful family. Heavenly Father, I lift up my beautiful family before you today. Bless them abundantly, with peace, health, love, and endless joy. Let every burden on their hearts be lifted, every tear wiped away, and every struggle turned into strength. Father, surround them with your divine protection. Keep them safe from harm, from pain, and from the hands of those who wish them ill. Let their homes be filled with harmony, their minds with wisdom, and their hearts with unshakable faith. For those struggling financially, open the doors of provision. For those facing illness, send your healing power. For those feeling lost, be their guiding light. And for those who are happy, let their joy multiply. May my beautiful family never lack love, never lack hope, and never lack the strength to keep going. I declare that great things are coming, blessings, breakthroughs, and miracles beyond imagination. Amen. If you receive this prayer, type Amen in the comments. Now, my beautiful family, let's start. With love. New York City glitters as dusk falls. Standing in his office atop Titan Global's headquarters, Dominic Blackwood surveys his domain with cold detachment. At 52, his powerful frame still commands respect, sharp features accentuated by steely blue eyes that rarely reveal emotion. Mr. Blackwood, his chief of staff, Marcus Chen, interrupts cautiously. Quarterly projections are 12% above forecast. Dominic barely acknowledges this success. It's expected, not celebrated. The board meeting? 20 minutes, and Kaizen text documents were delivered for review. Dominic turns at this. Kaizen's quantum encryption technology is the final piece in his empire-building strategy. Every major corporation would depend on Titan's security systems. Tell me about the founder, he demands. Valentina Reyes, 38, MIT, Stanford Business. Built Kaizen from nothing after being forced out of her previous company. Private, no scandals. She's insisting on meeting you personally before signing. Dominic's expression hardens. We don't renegotiate at this stage. She's not asking for different terms. She just wants to look the Emperor in the eyes before she hands over her life's work. The nickname, never used in his presence, hangs in the air. 20 years ago, after decimating competitors during the financial crisis, the Wall Street Journal first called him that. The Emperor, cold, absolute, untouchable. Fine. 30 minutes tomorrow, and have security compile a complete profile. I want to know what she's really after. Alone again, Dominic stares at the city below. 20 years ago, he made a vow after crawling from devastation. Emotion is weakness, attachment is vulnerability, trust is a luxury he could never again afford. The business world whispers about him. How the last VP who asked about his personal life was transferred to Siberia the next day. How the beautiful women occasionally photographed with him at events are never seen twice, never allowed into his private world. Physical release is necessity. Emotional connection is threat. In the boardroom, 12 executives rise as he enters, their respect visibly tinged with fear. For 2 hours, he dissects their strategies, challenges their assumptions, and redraws the future of a conglomerate that spans 17 countries and controls interests from shipping to pharmaceuticals, fintech to aerospace. Later, his Rolls-Royce carries him to his penthouse, a sterile monument to wealth without warmth. No photographs, no mementos. Memory is liability. His private phone line rings. "Sir," his head of security reports, "we've completed the assessment on Valentina Reyes. There's something you should know. She has a connection to Alexandra Chambers." The name hits like physical impact. Alexandra, his former fiancée who orchestrated his destruction 20 years ago, who watched coldly as his reputation was shredded, who weaponized his trust. What connection? His voice betrays nothing. Indirect but concerning. Reyes interned at Chambers Ventures 15 years ago, before Alexandra took over her father's firm. Nothing in her public profile mentions it. Dominic processes this like a chess player discovering an opponent's trap. Continue surveillance, full spectrum. Everything. He pours 3 fingers of scotch, a rare indulgence. Control is his religion, but tonight warrants exception. Tomorrow, Valentina Reyes will enter his office thinking she's meeting a buyer. She has no idea she's walking into the lair of someone who now sees her as existential threat, unless she knows exactly what she's doing. Either way, Dominic makes a silent promise as darkness deepens. If this is Alexandra's revenge plot, he won't just defend himself. This time, he'll annihilate his enemies so completely that not even their shadows will remain. The Emperor didn't just build his kingdom on ice, he became the ice itself. Chapter 2: The Worthy Opponent. Morning light invades Dominic's penthouse at precisely 5 a.m. He's already reviewing acquisition documents. His routine unfolds with military precision: punishing exercise, immaculate grooming. Decision fatigue is for lesser men. By 6:30, he's reviewing Valentina Reyes' dossier. The psychological profile reveals something unexpected: genuine conviction. Her technology could have made her billions years ago had she sold to military contractors. Instead, she built Kaizen slowly, rejecting investors whose values didn't align with hers. Marcus awaits at Titan Tower. Ms. Reyes arrived early. She declined coffee and requested water at room temperature. Dominic raises an eyebrow slightly, his version of surprise. Most visitors accept whatever is offered, grateful for buffer against his intensity. They reach his office doors. Marcus freezes. Valentina Reyes stands at Dominic's desk, not seated where guests await, but studying his monitors displaying global operations. She turns, completely unembarrassed. "Mr. Blackwood," she says, extending her hand, "thank you for making time." Dominic's first thought. The dossier photos failed her. Tall obsidian hair in a severe bob framing, features too strong to be merely pretty. Her charcoal suit expertly tailored, her only jewelry a platinum band. But her eyes command, dark amber, evaluating him with equal intensity. His second thought, an alarm. Something unfamiliar stirs, a response he hasn't experienced in 20 years. Recognition of something mirroring his own nature. "Miss Reyes," her grip is firm, "I understand you wanted to meet before finalizing our agreement." She smiles, transforming severity into unexpected warmth. "I never sign my life's work away to someone I haven't measured in person." Most people tiptoe around his reputation. Valentina speaks as though they are equals. "Marcus, that will be all." Once alone, he gestures to the sitting area. "Shall we?" She takes a seat, posture perfect. "Your offer is generous, but I need to know what Titan plans to do with my encryption technology." The terms are outlined in Section 27. I've read the contract. I'm asking about your vision, not your lawyer's language. He recalibrates. Global implementation across our security products. Your encryption makes data breaches mathematically impossible. And when governments demand backdoor access, when intelligence agencies threaten regulatory action, we would resist, he answers carefully. With what leverage? Once Kaizen is absorbed, the technology belongs to your shareholders. Their interests will always prioritize profit over principle. Dominic leans forward. You're concerned about ethics. I'm concerned about control, she corrects. I built this technology to protect people from surveillance, not enable it. For the next hour, their conversation evolves into intellectual challenge. Valentina matches him point for point, demonstrating brilliance that rivals his own. You built Titan from near bankruptcy, she observes over lunch. The business world calls it a miracle. The business world romanticizes success and ignores the brutality required. Is that why you maintain your complete emotional isolation? She asks, catching him off guard. The notorious Dominic Blackwood, who hasn't allowed himself a single meaningful relationship, romantic or otherwise, in 20 years. The room temperature seems to drop. No one speaks to him this way. You've been reading tabloids. I research thoroughly before negotiations. Your professional brilliance is well documented. So is your personal isolation. Danger signals flash. Yet Dominic responds instead of shutting down. Sentiment is incompatible with success at this level. Is that a conclusion based on evidence, or a fortress built from a single wound? The question strikes too close. Dominic stands abruptly. Your concerns about the technology's implementation are reasonable. I'll have legal draft additional protections. She rises, unfazed. Thank you for the most stimulating conversation I've had in years. I'll review your proposal and contact you tomorrow, she continues. There's no rush on my decision. This surprises him. You haven't accepted our offer. Did you assume I would? A smile touches her lips. Poor negotiation strategy. As she turns to leave, Dominic does something unprecedented. Have dinner with me tonight. For 20 years, he has never mixed business with anything resembling pleasure. Valentina's expression reveals nothing. Business or pleasure, Mr. Blackwood? Continued negotiation, he answers, regaining composure. More productive without corporate surroundings. 7 o'clock, she agrees. Text me the details. After she leaves, Dominic stands motionless. For the first time in decades, he'd encountered someone who challenged him, not just intellectually, but personally. His phone rings. James Harlow, his security chief. Sir, there's more to her connection with Alexandra Chambers than the internship. 15 years ago, Alexandra's father orchestrated her removal from NeuroSync after she refused to compromise ethical standards on a defense contract. So she has reason to hate the Chambers family. There's more. Valentina's encryption technology is based on theoretical work by her father, research discredited shortly before his suicide. The leading critic of his work was funded by a shell company, tracing back to Alexandra. Alexandra? Dominic finishes. Yes, sir. It appears Miss Reyes and Alexandra Chambers have a history of opposition, not collaboration. Relief shouldn't flood through him, shouldn't matter at all. Maintain surveillance, and arrange dinner reservations at Oriole, private room. Sir, you never dine with acquisition targets. Tonight I do. By evening, Dominic has convinced himself the dinner is strategic. He selects one of his identical suits but adds a charcoal tie instead of black, a small crack in 2 decades of rigid discipline. Oriole's private dining room overlooks Central Park. Valentina arrives precisely on time, wearing a form-fitting dress in deep burgundy silk that transforms corporate severity into refined elegance, her confidence undiminished in this more intimate setting. Their conversation resumes, challenging, direct, occasionally provocative. You could have sold this technology for billions, Dominic observes. Why build Kaizen yourself? The same reason you rebuilt Titan instead of selling its assets, she answers. Creation outweighs compensation. The insight startles him. While most executives assume his driving force is power or wealth accumulation, few recognize what truly motivates him, creating something monumental from ruins. Besides, once sold, innovation becomes property. Property can be misused. You don't trust others with your creation. Do you trust others with yours? She counters. The question cuts too close. The business world doesn't reward trust. No wonder they call you the emperor. Ruling alone from a frozen throne must be exhausting. And what about you? Your file mentions no relationships. You've built your empire as independently as I've built mine. Something flickers in her eyes, recognition of the parallel. Perhaps we're more alike than different, both shaped by betrayal, both choosing isolation as protection. The observation should trigger his defenses. Instead, he responds with unprecedented honesty. Isolation isn't a choice, it's a necessity. Is it, or simply the path of least resistance? Loving nothing means risking nothing. For 20 years, Dominic has maintained boundaries no one approaches. Tonight, those boundaries seem permeable. And what conclusion have you reached in your fight? He asks, voice lowered. That the fortress eventually becomes the prison. The walls that protect us from pain also block everything else. Connection, meaning, life itself. Something shifts between them, the air charged with recognition beyond words. When dinner ends, they stand outside, night air electric with unspoken possibility. One question, she asks before leaving. When was the last time you did something unpredictable? Something that wasn't calculated for maximum strategic advantage? The question hangs between them. Before he can answer, she's gone. Back in his penthouse, Dominic stands at the window. The evening replays, not the business discussion, but the moments of unexpected connection. His secure phone rings. Sir, James Harlow's voice is tense. There's been a security breach at Titan. Someone's accessing the sealed files on Project Lazarus. Dominic's blood runs cold. Project Lazarus, the encrypted archive containing irrefutable proof of Alexandra's involvement in Harrison's death, evidence that would destroy her empire and possibly send her to prison. If revealed. When? He demands. 20 minutes ago. 20 minutes ago, he stood outside the restaurant with Valentina. The timing can't be coincidence. Lock it down. Full system isolation. Already done, but there's more. We've been monitoring Ms. Rhea's communications. She received a call immediately after leaving your dinner. The caller was using military-grade encryption, but we captured a partial voice print. Dominic closes his eyes, already knowing. Alexandra. Yes, sir. It appears your dinner companion may not be the opponent we thought, but something potentially more dangerous. Chapter 3. Dangerous Propositions. Dawn finds Dominic in his private gym, punishing his body with greater intensity than usual. Physical exertion has always been his remedy for mental turmoil. Last night's revelation, Valentina's call to Alexandra immediately after their dinner, has shattered his equilibrium. His phone rings, James Harlow with the morning security briefing. The breach was contained before they accessed the core files, sir, but they were specifically targeting the chamber's evidence. Dominic pauses mid-rep. And the trace? Sophisticated, bounced through servers on 3 continents, but the attack signature matches previous infiltration attempts from Chambers Ventures. Alexandra's digital fingerprints are all over it. And Ms. Reyes? Her call to Alexandra lasted 47 seconds. We couldn't capture the content, only voice confirmation. This morning she's working at Kaizen headquarters. Business as usual. Dominic considers his options. Logic dictates immediate termination of the acquisition, severing all contact with Valentina. Yet something doesn't align. The intellectual connection they shared felt genuine, her challenges to his isolation too personal to be merely strategic. "Invite Ms. Reyes to my Adirondack estate this weekend," he says, the decision crystallizing as he speaks. "Frame it as a final negotiation retreat before closing the deal." A pause on the line. "Sir, you never bring acquisition targets to Stone Ridge." "Precisely why she won't suspect a trap. Position surveillance teams throughout the property. I want eyes on her every moment." "And what's the objective, sir?" "To determine if she's Alexandra's agent or something more complex. Prepare the house. We leave Friday morning." In his office later that morning, Dominic reviews the Project Lazarus files, evidence he's protected for 20 years. Photos of his former partner, Harrison Wells, meeting with Alexandra's father weeks before the scandal broke. Bank transfers showing how they orchestrated the fraud that was pinned on Dominic. Most damning, a recording of Alexandra discussing how to manipulate evidence to ensure Dominic took the fall. He'd survived the scandal through sheer will, rebuilding his reputation over years of meticulous work. But he never used the evidence to clear his name completely. Using it would mean acknowledging how completely he'd been deceived by the woman he once planned to marry. His intercom buzzes. "Mr. Blackwood, Valentina Reyes is calling on line 1. Dominic takes a controlled breath. "Put her through." "Mr. Blackwood." Her voice carries the same confidence as in person. "I've reviewed your proposed amendments to the acquisition terms. The additional protections for the encryption protocol are acceptable." "I'm pleased to hear that," he responds, voice neutral. "Perhaps we should finalize the details in person. I'm hosting a small retreat at my Adirondack estate this weekend, just the principals involved in the acquisition. More productive than endless email exchanges." A brief pause. "Your estate?" That's unexpected. "The acquisition is significant enough to warrant breaking routine." "I accept," she says after a moment. "Text me the details." After the call ends, Dominic sits motionless, questioning his own strategy. Bringing Valentina to Stone Ridge violates every protocol he's established. The estate is his sanctuary, the one place untouched by business entanglements. No acquisition target has ever set foot there. Few even know it exists. Yet something compels him to this dangerous gambit. If Valentina is manipulating him on Alexandra's behalf, he needs to know with certainty. And if she isn't, that possibility disturbs him more. Friday morning, his helicopter lifts off from Manhattan, banking north toward the Adirondack Mountains. The city's rigid geometries give way to rolling wilderness, urban gray yielding to the vibrant oranges and reds of autumn foliage. Stone Ridge sits on 500 acres of pristine wilderness, the modernist glass and stone structure emerging from the landscape like a natural formation. It's the only place Dominic truly relaxes, as much as a man like him ever relaxes. Valentina's helicopter arrives an hour after his. She emerges in casual elegance, dark jeans, cashmere sweater, leather boots, a striking contrast to her corporate armor. "This is breathtaking," she says, surveying the mountains surrounding them. "Not what I expected from the Emperor of Wall Street." "What did you expect?" he asks, leading her toward the house. "Something more fortress-like, less connected to nature." Inside, soaring windows frame panoramic views of mountains and forest. Unlike his sterile penthouse, the estate contains subtle personal touches, books that aren't just for display, a piano in the corner, artwork selected for preference rather than investment value. "You play?" Valentina asks, noticing the piano. Not anymore. He changes the subject. I thought we'd review the final points of the acquisition after dinner. The chef has prepared something. Unless you'd prefer to work immediately. Dinner sounds perfect. She moves to the windows, gazing at the wilderness. I've never understood powerful people who surround themselves with concrete and steel when they could have this instead. Most find nature unsettling, too unpredictable. And you don't? She turns to face him. I find unpredictability clarifying. It reveals what matters when control is impossible. Her eyes meet his. An unexpected philosophy from someone who controls every aspect of his existence. The conversation pauses as his housekeeper announces dinner. They dine on the terrace despite the autumn chill, heaters creating a cocoon of warmth as night falls. Their discussion ranges beyond business to literature, mathematics, music, each revelation adding complexity to his image of her. Your father was Emilio Reyes, Dominic says when the meal concludes. The mathematician whose work on quantum encryption was discredited. She stiffens slightly. You've done your research. As have you. You know about my past with Alexandra Chambers. Their eyes lock across the table, pretenses falling away. I know she was your fiancée 20 years ago, Valentina acknowledges. I know she turned on you during the scandal with Harrison Wells. Is that why you accepted my dinner invitation? To satisfy curiosity about the notorious Dominic Blackwood? No. Her gaze doesn't waver. I accepted because in 20 years of building Kaizen, you're the first person I've met who understands the weight of creation. Who knows what it means to build something that matters more than yourself? The sincerity in her voice is either genuine or masterfully feigned. And your call to Alexandra immediately after our dinner, was that also about mutual understanding? Surprise flashes across her features. You're monitoring my calls. I monitor everyone who approaches $1 trillion acquisition. Valentina sets down her wine glass deliberately. Alexandra Chambers called me. I didn't call her. And what did she want after 20 years of silence? To warn me about you, to tell me the Dominic Blackwood the world knows is a facade, hiding something dangerous. She leans forward. She said I should walk away from the acquisition before I discover what you really are. And yet, you're here. Because I don't trust Alexandra Chambers. 20 years ago, she orchestrated my father's academic destruction to protect Chambers Ventures' interests. She's the reason his research was discredited. The reason he... Valentina stops, composing herself. I came this weekend to understand if you're truly her enemy or just another version of her. Dominic absorbs this, recalibrating his assessment. You believe I might be complicit with her? I believe powerful people often share more similarities than differences. But last night something clicked. The security breach at Titan. It targeted evidence against Alexandra, didn't it? Evidence you've never used. His silence confirms her deduction. She's afraid of you, Valentina continues, not because you're ruthless in business, but because you know what she did. You have proof that could destroy her, even now. Perhaps, Dominic concedes, or perhaps this entire interaction is an elaborate strategy to determine what evidence I possess. She stands, moving around the table until she's directly beside him. Then why invite me here? Why bring a potential threat into your sanctuary? The proximity unsettles him, her scent, her warmth, the intelligence in her eyes that sees too clearly. To determine if you're a threat. And what have you determined? That you're either the most skilled operative I've ever encountered or, she prompts when he doesn't continue, or something I never expected to find. The air between them charges with possibility. For 20 years, Dominic has maintained perfect control over every aspect of his existence. Now, standing on his terrace with a woman who might be enemy or ally, he feels that control slipping. I should show you the acquisition amendments, he says, retreating to safer ground. Valentina follows him to his study where documents await on his desk. As they review complex legal language, their shoulders occasionally touch, each contact sending electrical awareness through him. This physical response to proximity is foreign, a distraction he's eliminated for decades. These provisions protect the technology, she acknowledges, initialing pages. But what protects you, Dominic? The use of his first name, another boundary crossed. From what? From whatever happened 20 years ago that convinced you isolation was the only safe choice. The directness of the question breaches defenses he thought impenetrable. Safety was never the objective. Effectiveness was. Is that what you tell yourself at night when the silence is too complete? Her voice softens. That loneliness is simply the price of success. Psychological manipulation is beneath you, he counters. It's not manipulation to recognize a kindred spirit. She turns to face him fully. We've both built fortresses around ourselves, Dominic. The difference is I've begun to question whether the protection is worth the cost. Something in her words resonates with a doubt he's refused to acknowledge for 20 years. Before he can respond, his secure phone vibrates. James Harlow. "Excuse me," he tells Valentina, stepping away to answer. "Sir, we've detected unauthorized access to the estate's security network. Someone's attempting to activate the interior surveillance systems remotely." Dominic glances at Valentina, who's studying the acquisition documents. Source? Initial trace suggests Chambers Ventures, but it's too obvious. Like they want us to know it's them. Lock down all systems. Switch to analog security protocols. Already implementing. Sir, there's something else. We've been monitoring communications satellites covering the estate. There's a directed signal aimed at your location. Military grade. Dominic's mind calculates possibilities. Alexandra is watching us. It appears so, sir. Question is why. Ending the call, Dominic returns to find Valentina studying him. Problem, she asks. A minor security issue. He makes a swift decision. It's getting late. Perhaps we should continue tomorrow. She doesn't move. You don't trust me. I don't trust anyone, Ms. Reyes. We're back to formalities. A sad smile touches her lips. I thought we'd moved beyond that. Circumstances suggest caution is warranted. Understanding dawns in her eyes. Alexandra has made contact again. She's watching us, isn't she? The perceptiveness is unsettling. Why would you assume that? Because she's obsessed with you, 20 years later, and she still can't let go of whatever happened between you. Dominic studies her, looking for deception and finding none. What exactly do you know about my history with Alexandra? Valentina hesitates, then commits to honesty. I know she was your fiancée when Harrison Wells died. I know she turned on you publicly, supporting the narrative that you were responsible. What I don't know is why she's still so determined to destroy you after all this time. Perhaps because I survived her first attempt. No, Valentina shakes her head. This is personal for her, beyond business, beyond reputation. She speaks of you with hatred, but also fascination. The assessment aligns with his own understanding of his former fiancée. And how do you know this? Because 10 years ago, when Kaizen was struggling to secure funding, Alexandra approached me, offered everything I needed with one condition. I would eventually provide access to anything I developed to Chambers Ventures. I declined. Yet she called you recently. Because she's heard rumors about the acquisition. Valentina steps closer. She's afraid of what might happen if your resources combine with my technology. Their proximity ignites awareness he's suppressed for decades. Standing in his private sanctuary with this woman who matches him intellectually, who sees through his armor, Dominic feels foundations shifting beneath him. What are you proposing? He asks, voice lowered. an alliance against a common enemy. Her eyes hold his, starting with honesty between us. Honesty is a luxury in our world. Then let's be luxurious for one night. She reaches out, her fingertips lightly touching his hand. Tell me what really happened 20 years ago, Dominic. And I'll tell you how my encryption can help you finally use the evidence you've protected all this time. The touch of her hand ignites something dormant. For 20 years, Dominic has walked a solitary path, trusting no one with his truth, his pain, his evidence. The proposition before him now is more dangerous than any corporate takeover. To trust this brilliant, perceptive woman with secrets he's guarded for 2 decades. If this is manipulation, he says quietly, it's masterful. It's not manipulation, she replies. It's recognition. As wind sweeps across the mountains surrounding them, Dominic makes a decision that contradicts 20 years of calculated caution. He begins to speak the truth he's never shared. About Harrison, about Alexandra, about betrayal so complete it shattered his capacity for trust. And for the first time in 20 years, Dominic Blackwood allows someone past his walls. Chapter 4. Trust. Fractured firelight flickers across Dominic's face as he concludes his 20-year-old secret. Outside, rain lashes against the windows, the storm matching his revelation. Harrison Wells wasn't just my business partner, he tells Valentina. He was like a brother. We built the original company from nothing, working 18-hour days, sleeping in the office. He moves to the window. When we acquired Meridian Tech, it pushed us global. Harrison suggested we celebrate. A bitter smile appears. I didn't know he'd already made a deal with William Chambers, Alexandra's father. What kind of deal? Valentina asks. The kind that would transfer controlling interest of our company to Chambers Ventures through fraudulent stock manipulation, making it appear I'd committed securities fraud. Harrison had been embezzling for months, creating a false paper trail implicating me. I'd take the fall, go to prison, while Harrison became CEO of our company under Chambers' family control. But it didn't work. Not entirely. The night before, I found discrepancies in our accounts. When I confronted Harrison, he pauses. He panicked, admitted everything, said Alexandra had convinced him I would destroy the company with my ambition. And then I left to confront Alexandra. When I returned the next morning, Harrison was dead. Apparent suicide, a note confessing to financial crimes, absolving me. His eyes turned cold. A convenient narrative for the Chambers family. With Harrison dead, they needed a new scapegoat. You? Yes. Alexandra led the charge, portraying herself as the heartbroken fiancé who discovered my true nature. Her father's influence triggered investigations. The scandal nearly destroyed me. But you had evidence of their involvement. Dominic nods. Security footage, financial records Harrison gave me, recordings of meetings between Harrison and William Chambers. Most damning, a recording of Alexandra discussing how to frame me if Harrison lost his nerve. Why didn't you use it? Initially, survival required focus. Later, exposing them meant admitting how completely I'd been deceived by the woman I'd planned to marry. His jaw tightens. I chose to rebuild instead, to become untouchable. And Project Lazarus, that's where you've kept this evidence. Yes, evidence Alexandra still fears could destroy her. Valentina moves closer. That's why she's watching us. She's afraid I'll give you the means to finally use what you know. Can you? Their eyes lock in assessment. My encryption was designed to protect data during transmission, to create unhackable channels. She steps closer. With modification, it could distribute your evidence simultaneously to regulatory agencies, media, and law enforcement, with authentication proving legitimacy. creating a dead man's switch Alexandra couldn't stop. Exactly. Only inches separate them. Together we could finally hold her accountable. The proposition hangs between them, professional alliance layered with something deeper. For 20 years, Dominic has trusted no one. Now, standing before this woman who matches him in intellect and determination, he feels walls crumbling. His secure phone interrupts. James Harlow again. "Sir, we've detected a breach of the estate's perimeter. 3 individuals, armed, approaching from the north." Dominic's mind shifts to strategic mode. Time to contact. 4 minutes maximum. Security team is moving to intercept. Understood. Initiate protocol Echo. He turns to Valentina. "We need to move. Now." What's happening? Alexandra has escalated from surveillance to direct action. He moves to a hidden panel, revealing a secure room. "We have unwelcome visitors." "She's trying to retrieve your evidence, or eliminate the threat we represent together." He retrieves a small case from the safe. "My security team is responding, but we need to relocate." He leads her rapidly toward the garage. "There's a secure location 30 minutes from here. We'll take separate vehicles as precaution." Outside, rain hammers the landscape. Lightning splits the sky as they reach his high-performance vehicles. "Take the Range Rover," he instructs, handing her keys. "Follow the access road east, then north at the first junction. The GPS has the destination." He presses the case into her hands. "This contains secure drives with copies of the evidence. If we're separated, proceed to the coordinates." She grips his arm. "Dominic, we should stay together." "Too risky. They'll prioritize capturing me." Concern flashes in her eyes, something beyond professional alliance. "Be careful." The moment stretches between them. Then distant gunfire shatters it, security engaging the intruders. "Go! Now!" They separate to different vehicles. Dominic watches her Range Rover disappear into the storm before gunning his Aston Martin in the opposite direction, a decoy to draw pursuit. The vehicle slides on rain-slicked roads as he pushes it to its limits. Through his earpiece, James provides updates. 2 hostiles neutralized, 1 escaped. Appears they had vehicle support waiting. Description: professional, military-grade equipment, no identification. Track Ms. Reyes' vehicle, ensure she reaches the safe house. Already monitoring. Sir, there's an incoming call on your secure line. It's Alexandra Chambers. Dominic's hands tighten on the steering wheel. "Put her through." "Dominic." Alexandra's voice unchanged after 20 years. "Still running when things get difficult." "Still sending others to do your dirty work," he counters, navigating a treacherous curve. "I prefer to think of it as resource allocation. You always did the same." "What do you want, Alexandra?" "The same thing I've wanted for 20 years, for you to disappear." "You had your chance, you failed." Her laugh, once familiar, now chills him. "Did I? You've spent 20 years alone, Dominic. No real connections, no relationships. A king ruling over an empty kingdom. I'd call that success." The observation cuts deeper than he'd admit. "Is that why you're targeting Valentina? Afraid I might finally have found an ally?" "Valentina Reyes is a means to an end, nothing more." Her tone sharpens. "The real question is what she means to you. I've been watching, Dominic. You've broken your precious protocols for her, invited her into your sanctuary, shared your secrets. It's so unlike you to be vulnerable. You know nothing about me anymore. I know what she means to you. I've been watching, Dominic. You've broken every rule for her. Your precious protocols, your sanctuary, your secrets. So unlike the great Dominic Blackwood to show vulnerability. Touch her and nothing will protect you from what I have." There it is, the confirmation I needed. Satisfaction colors her tone. You care about her, after all your rules about emotional detachment. How disappointing. Through the windshield, Dominic sees headlights approaching rapidly from behind, pursuit vehicle gaining despite the storm. You've made a critical mistake, Alexandra continues. Caring makes you vulnerable. I should know. I taught you that lesson once before. You taught me to recognize enemies disguised as allies. And which is Valentina, I wonder? Ally or enemy? I guess we'll find out. I've left you a gift at the safe house. Consider it a reminder of our history. The call ends as the pursuing vehicle rams Dominic's rear bumper, sending the Aston Martin fishtailing across the slick road. He fights for control, tires finding purchase as he accelerates away. His mind races with Alexandra's threat. The safe house, where Valentina is headed. Alone. James, he barks into his calm. Valentina's in danger. Get a team to the safe house immediately. Already en route, sir, but we're detecting signal jamming in that sector. Communications are compromised. The pursuing vehicle rams him again, harder. Through his rearview mirror, Dominic glimpses the driver, military precision in his movements. Making a split-second decision, Dominic cuts the wheel sharply, sending his vehicle plunging down an unmarked forest track, a risk that could end in disaster or escape. For 20 years, he has calculated every move, controlled every variable. Now, racing through darkness with Alexandra's threat echoing in his mind, Dominic confronts a terrifying truth. For the first time since his destruction 2 decades ago, he's placed trust in someone else. And that trust has created a vulnerability his enemies are already exploiting. As his vehicle bounces violently down the rough track, one thought consumes him. He cannot lose Valentina. Not to Alexandra. Not when she's awakened something in him he thought long dead. The rain intensifies, lightning splitting the sky as he pushes toward the safe house, praying he isn't already too late. Chapter 5. The Hidden Enemy. Lightning illuminates the forest in strobing flashes as Dominic's Aston Martin skids through mud. He's lost his pursuers down an unmarked logging road only locals would know, but the detour has cost precious minutes, minutes Valentina might not have. His car bursts from the tree line, revealing the safe house ahead, a reinforced concrete structure designed to withstand attacks. Valentina's Range Rover is parked outside, undisturbed. No signs of forced entry, no security alerts visible. Dominic approaches cautiously, weapon drawn. The silence surrounding the house raises alarm bells louder than any commotion would. "Valentina!" he calls, entering through the secure airlock. Interior lights activate automatically, revealing minimalist furnishings and security systems. Nothing appears disturbed. "In here." Her voice from the main living space sounds strained. Dominic rounds the corner and freezes. Valentina stands rigidly by the window. A tall, silver-haired man in an impeccable suit stands behind her, the barrel of a gun pressed against her spine. "Elliot," Dominic acknowledges, recognizing his CFO of 15 years. "This is unexpected." Elliot Nash smiles thinly. "I imagine it is. The Emperor of Wall Street finally outmaneuvered. Please put your weapon down, Dominic. Slowly." Dominic complies, mind calculating possibilities. "Working for Alexandra now? I thought your loyalty was more expensive." "You assume this is recent," Elliot replies. "Some betrayals are years in the making." Valentina's eyes communicate silent apology. "He was waiting when I arrived," she explains. "Alexandra called me on the drive, warned me not to enter. I should have listened." "Alexandra called you?" Dominic's focus sharpens. "Surprising, isn't it?" Elliot shifts slightly. "Even enemies can temporarily align when facing a greater threat, and you two together represent exactly that." Understanding dawns. She's not targeting Valentina because of me. She fears what we might accomplish together. Your evidence against Alexandra, combined with Ms. Reyes's encryption technology, would be problematic for certain arrangements. Elliot gestures. The case, please. Dominic notices the secure case containing his evidence is missing from Valentina's possession. Where is it? Hidden, she answers, defiance flashing. I realized something was wrong when I arrived. Elliot's expression hardens. Where is the case, Miss Reyes? I'll retrieve it, Dominic interrupts, once you lower your weapon. You're not in a position to negotiate. Neither are you. That evidence is secured with biometric locks. Without me, it's worthless. Elliot considers this. Fine. We'll all retrieve it together. As they move through the safe house, Dominic maintains careful awareness of distances and angles. Elliot was hired for financial brilliance, not combat skills. How long have you been working with Alexandra? Dominic asks as they descend to the lower level. For 15 years, Elliot admits, since just before you hired me. I was her contingency plan after her first attempt to destroy you failed. Insurance that someone would always have eyes on you. 15 years is impressive commitment to betrayal. It hasn't been without rewards. Elliot's smile turns cold. Extremely profitable. They reach the secure room housing backup servers. Dominic enters a complex code, aware of Elliot's gun still trained on Valentina. Alexandra must be truly desperate to expose you now, Dominic observes. What changed? You did. Elliot's gaze shifts between them. 20 years of perfect isolation, then suddenly you're bringing Valentina Reyes to your private sanctuary, sharing secrets, breaking protocols. Alexandra recognized the threat immediately. The threat of what? Collaboration. Connection. Elliot's assessment is eerily astute. Alone, you were predictable, controlled. With someone who matches you, someone you might actually trust, you become dangerous again. The vault door opens. Dominic enters first, moving toward a secure cabinet at the rear. The merger of Titan and Kaizen would create more than market dominance, Elliot continues. Your combined resources and knowledge could finally give you the platform to expose Alexandra completely. I underestimated her paranoia, Dominic admits, carefully positioning himself as he works the cabinet locks. Not paranoia. Pragmatism. Elliot keeps Valentina at gunpoint near the doorway. She's built her empire on the foundation of your silence. If that foundation crumbles, everything she has falls with it, Valentina finishes. Precisely, Elliot gestures impatiently. The evidence, Dominic. Now. Dominic removes a secure drive from the cabinet. Everything Alexandra fears. 20 years of protected evidence, enough to destroy her completely. And now it belongs to her. Elliot extends his free hand. Consider it the price of Miss Reyes' continued existence. Dominic hesitates. Then subtle movement catches his eye, Valentina's almost imperceptible nod. Their eyes lock briefly, unspoken understanding passing between them. You know what amazes me, Elliot? Dominic steps forward slowly. That Alexandra still underestimates me after all this time. She's covered every contingency. Except one. Dominic smiles coldly. I never bring anyone to my properties without extensive background investigation, including you, 15 years ago. Elliot's expression flickers with uncertainty. Did you really think I didn't know? That I didn't see the pattern of information leaks? I've known about your arrangement with Alexandra for 12 years. You're bluffing, Elliot whispers, but doubt has crept into his voice. Why do you think you've never had access to certain levels of information? You've been operating in a carefully constructed sandbox, Elliot, feeding Alexandra exactly what I wanted her to know. The revelation lands like a physical blow. Elliot's gun hand wavers slightly. In that moment of distraction, Valentina acts, a swift, practiced movement suggesting military or security training beyond her corporate background. She twists away, disrupting his aim while delivering a precise strike to his wrist. The gun clatters to the floor as Dominic lunges forward. The struggle is brief but decisive. Elliot fights with desperate strength, but Dominic's controlled fury overwhelms him. Valentina assists with tactical precision. Moments later, Elliot lies unconscious, secured with zip ties from the emergency kit. "Are you hurt?" Dominic's focus shifts entirely to Valentina, hands examining her for injuries. "I'm fine." She meets his gaze steadily. "You knew he was working for Alexandra? All this time?" "I've identified 3 moles in my organization over the years. Elliot was the highest placed, therefore the most valuable to maintain." "Misinformation channel," she concludes admiringly. "You've been feeding Alexandra false intelligence through him." "Strategic half-truths." Dominic retrieves the fallen weapon, more effective than outright lies. "And the case with the evidence? Secure." He moves to a different cabinet, removing the actual case. This contains what Alexandra truly fears, not just financial records, but forensic evidence suggesting Harrison was already dead before the so-called suicide note was written. Voice recordings of her discussing the frame-up with her father. Witness testimony placing her at Harrison's apartment the night he died. "We're not safe here," Dominic decides, checking his secure phone. "We need to move." "Where?" "New York. It's time to end this." He meets her gaze directly. "Alexandra has escalated beyond corporate maneuvering. Tonight was attempted murder. You want to expose her publicly, after 20 years of silence?" "I want to neutralize the threat, permanently." His expression reveals determination forged in decades of patient calculation. "With your encryption technology, we can distribute the evidence beyond her reach before she can respond." Valentina studies him. "This isn't just about protection anymore, is it? This is personal." "It became personal when she targeted you." The admission emerges before he can analyze its implications. The moment stretches between them, charged with significance. For 20 years, Dominic has made every decision with cold, strategic precision. Now he acknowledges an uncomfortable truth. His motivation has shifted from self-protection to something more primal, protecting her. "We're stronger together than apart," Valentina says quietly. "Alexandra recognized that before we did." Dominic nods once, decision crystallizing. "We'll take the helicopter. There's a secured landing pad 2 miles from here." As they prepare to depart, Dominic secures Elliot for later retrieval and contacts his security chief. "James, we have Elliot Nash in custody. He's been working with Alexandra." "Not entirely surprising, sir. The executive floor is compromised. Someone's accessing archived records on the original scandal. It's not coming from Chambers Ventures. It's originating from inside Titan." The implication silences Dominic momentarily. "Someone else is involved." "Yes, sir, and given the security clearance required, it has to be someone on my leadership team. I've initiated lockdown protocols for all sensitive systems. Focus on protecting Project Lazarus files. Nothing else matters." Dominic ends the call, turning to Valentina. "We have another problem. Alexandra has more allies within Titan." "This isn't just about preventing exposure of past crimes," Valentina concludes. "Alexandra's attempting a hostile takeover, isn't she? Using your own people against you?" "It appears so." Dominic's expression hardens. "We're not just fighting to protect evidence. We're fighting for control of Titan itself." Outside, the storm has intensified, rain hammering with apocalyptic fury. Lightning illuminates their faces in stark relief. 2 brilliant strategists who've recognized their strongest move is alliance. "Then we strike first," Valentina decides, determination matching his own. "Your evidence combined with my encryption. By morning, Alexandra will have nowhere to hide." For the first time in 20 years, Dominic Blackwood allows himself to truly trust another person, not because it's strategically optimal, but because something deeper has awakened, something he thought Alexandra had killed forever. Chapter 6: Queen's Gambit. The helicopter cuts through the storm, Manhattan's skyline emerging through rain-streaked windows. Dominic sits beside Valentina, both focused on the secure tablet displaying Titan Tower's schematics. The server room housing Project Lazarus has independent security, Dominic explains. Biometric access limited to me and James Harlow. And with your CFO compromised, we can't trust standard protocols, Valentina adds, analyzing the building's digital defenses. Alexandra will anticipate our return. She'll have countermeasures in place. Dawn breaks as they land on Titan Tower's helipad. The building stands eerily quiet, Sunday morning ensuring minimal staff. James Harlow awaits them, expression grim. Sir, we've identified the second infiltrator, Richard Lennox, Chief Information Officer. Dominic absorbs this with cold calculation. Status? In custody. He was attempting to override the Project Lazarus security protocols when we apprehended him. And the evidence? Secure, but there's a complication. 3 board members have called an emergency meeting for noon today. They're challenging your leadership based on new information about the Harrison Wells scandal. Alexandra's endgame, Dominic concludes. Resurrect the old allegations, replace me as CEO, then dismantle the evidence before it can be used. Valentina interjects. If she controls Titan, she controls whether the Kaizen acquisition proceeds. She gets my encryption technology and buries your evidence in one move. They proceed to Dominic's office, converting it to a command center. Valentina immediately begins adapting her encryption protocol to protect and distribute the evidence, fingers flying across keyboards with extraordinary speed. The board meeting gives us a deadline, Dominic observes, reviewing the dossiers of compromised executives. We need to neutralize Alexandra before noon. I need 30 minutes to modify my algorithm, Valentina responds without looking up. Then we can create the distribution protocol that will send your evidence to regulatory agencies, law enforcement, and media simultaneously. Dominic's secure phone rings. Unknown number. He answers on speaker. I always admired your resilience, Alexandra's voice fills the room. Most men would have broken after what you endured. Most betrayers would have the wisdom to disappear, he counters. She laughs softly. Is Ms. Reyes with you? I do hope so. I'd hate for her to miss what happens next. Your infiltrators have been contained, Alexandra. The evidence remains secure. Poor Dominic, still thinking in terms of defense when the game has already advanced to the next phase. Her tone turns businesslike. Check your company's financial systems, specifically the offshore accounts in the Caymans. James Harlow types rapidly, pulling up the information. His expression confirms Alexandra's implication before he speaks. Sir, there are massive transfers underway, billions moving from Titan's strategic reserves to untraceable accounts. Not untraceable, Alexandra corrects. Very traceable to you, Dominic, a desperate CEO trying to abscond with company funds before his fraudulent past catches up with him. History repeating itself, wouldn't you say? Dominic maintains his composure. Clumsy. The transactions will be reversed once we expose the fraud. Will they? The banking protocols being used are your own, authorized with your biometric signatures, which my people obtained from Elliot years ago. By the time you convince financial authorities of tampering, the damage to Titan will be irreparable. On screen, Valentina signals progress with their countermeasures. Dominic needs to keep Alexandra talking. What do you want, Alexandra? The same thing I've always wanted. You destroyed. But I've learned patience over 20 years. Her voice softens dangerously. Resign as CEO before the board meeting. Announce you're stepping down due to health concerns. Walk away from Titan, from the Kaizen acquisition, from the evidence against me. And if I refuse, then I complete the financial transfers, release fabricated evidence of your involvement in Harrison's death, and ensure Titan collapses spectacularly, taking you and Ms. Reyes with it. The threat hangs in the air. You have 2 hours to decide. The call ends. Dominic turns to his team. Can we stop the transfers? Working on it, James responds. But the authorization appears legitimate. Our security is being circumvented using your own protocols. Valentina interrupts. I've completed the encryption modifications. We can deploy immediately. And if we do? Dominic questions, weighing options. Alexandra's crimes become public instantly. Alexandra's crimes become public instantly. But the financial damage to Titan continues, potentially billions before we can halt it. Dominic faces the impossible choice Alexandra has engineered: save his company or destroy his enemy. For 20 years, he's built Titan as his fortress against vulnerability. Now that fortress is weaponized against him. There's a third option, Valentina suggests, stepping closer. But it's risky. I'm listening. We use my encryption to create a secure channel directly to Alexandra's systems. Instead of distributing the evidence publicly, we demonstrate we can do so at any time. Then we offer a trade. She stops the financial attack on Titan. We withhold the evidence. Mutually assured destruction, Dominic concludes. But she would never honor such an agreement long term. She doesn't have to. We just need to buy time to secure Titan's systems and prepare a controlled release of the evidence. James interrupts. Sir, there's something else you should know. We've traced the current financial operations. They're being controlled from a private server room at Chambers Tower. Alexandra is running this personally, Dominic realizes. Yes, sir. Our digital forensics team confirms she's actively managing the transfers herself. Her digital signature is unmistakable. A strategy crystallizes in Dominic's mind. Then we divide our approach. Valentina, continue developing the encrypted distribution system. James, assemble a security team. His expression hardens with determination. I'm going to pay Alexandra a personal visit. That's exactly what she wants, Valentina objects. She's trying to draw you out, separate us. Then we use her strategy against her. Dominic outlines his plan rapidly. I'll confront Alexandra directly, keeping her focus on me. Meanwhile, you'll use your encryption to penetrate her systems and halt the transfers. A diversion, Valentina understands immediately, but extremely dangerous. She could have a trap prepared. Undoubtedly, which is why I won't be going alone. He turns to James. Prepare the executive transport, full security detail. As preparations accelerate, Dominic and Valentina share a private moment in his office. This is a significant risk, she says quietly. Alexandra has waited 20 years for this confrontation. Which makes her predictable, he responds. Her desire for personal victory will override strategic caution. Valentina steps closer, concern evident. Don't underestimate her desperation. She's not just fighting for reputation anymore. She's fighting for freedom. As am I. His gaze holds hers. For 20 years, she's been my prison as much as I've been hers. Understanding passes between them, the recognition that this confrontation transcends business rivalry. For both Dominic and Alexandra, it represents final resolution of a past that has defined them. Be careful, Valentina says softly. I've only just found you. I'm not prepared to lose you to her again. The admission of personal stake hangs between them, neither retreating from its implications. After 20 years of emotional isolation, Dominic faces the irony that connection has become his strongest motivation precisely when it creates his greatest vulnerability. Trust in our strategy, he tells her. Together, we're stronger than she anticipated. Their parting is brief, but charged with unspoken promise. As his security team does final weapons checks and reviews building schematics, Dominic's phone vibrates with an urgent message from James. Alert! Armed intruders detected in Titan's server room. Security engaging. Dominic shows Valentina the message. Alexandra's moving on multiple fronts. Go, she urges. I'll handle the cyber defenses here. As his team rushes toward the elevators, alarms begin blaring throughout Titan Tower. Through the security feed on his phone, Dominic watches masked intruders exchanging gunfire with his security team 3 floors below. Alexandra's desperation has escalated beyond financial manipulation to armed assault. For the first time since her betrayal 20 years ago, Dominic faces not just professional threat, but physical danger. Yet unlike that devastating moment when he stood alone against her schemes, today he fights with Valentina as his ally, their combined strengths creating something neither could achieve alone. For the first time since Alexandra's betrayal, Dominic Blackwood isn't fighting merely to survive. He's fighting to live. Chapter 7. The Emperor's Heart. Rain continues to pound Manhattan as Dominic's armored Maybach glides through near-empty Sunday streets. Chambers Tower rises before them, a gleaming spire of glass and steel mirroring Titan Tower across the financial district. Perimeter security is extensive, James reports from beside him. Private military contractors, 8 visible, likely more inside. Expected, Dominic responds, reviewing building schematics on his tablet. Alexandra anticipates confrontation but wants it on her terms. His secure phone displays Valentina's message, encryption deployed, ready on your signal. The timing must be precise. While Dominic occupies Alexandra's attention, Valentina will penetrate Chambers' systems, halting the financial assault on Titan and securing access to distribute the evidence if necessary. The Maybach stops at Chambers Tower's private entrance. Security personnel approach immediately, professional, armed, alert. Dominic exits the vehicle alone. Mr. Blackwood, the lead security officer, acknowledges. Ms. Chambers is expecting you. Your security team remains here. Of course. Dominic straightens his already impeccable suit. 20 years of anticipation crystallize into this moment. Inside, the elevator ascends directly to the penthouse executive suite. The doors open to reveal Alexandra Chambers waiting, framed against floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the storm-racked city. 20 years have treated her well, silver threading elegantly through once brown hair, her face showing few signs of age beyond subtle lines around calculating eyes. Power has preserved her, much as it has preserved him. Dominic. She gestures to a sitting area. Right on schedule, always so predictable. Alexandra. He remains standing. You seem well. Betrayal evidently agrees with you. She smiles, unaffected by the barb. Pragmatism agrees with me. Something you never fully embraced. She studies him openly. You look tired. Is Miss Reyes keeping you up at night with her idealistic notions? I'm here to negotiate the end of your financial attack on Titan. So direct. What happened to the strategist who could play the long game? She moves to a bar, pouring herself a drink. None for you, I assume. Still maintaining perfect control. The transfers, Alexandra. Stop them now. She sips her drink, watching him over the rim. Or what? You'll release your precious evidence? Destroy my reputation while I destroy your company? Mutually assured destruction seems unlike you. Times change. People don't. Her gaze sharpens. Especially you, Dominic. 20 years of isolation, building walls so high no one could ever hurt you again. Then Valentina Reyes appears and suddenly you're taking risks, breaking protocols, making emotional decisions. Dominic activates the signal device in his pocket, alerting Valentina to begin the cyber intervention. Now he needs to keep Alexandra engaged. You've gone to extraordinary lengths to monitor my personal life. I'm flattered by the attention. She laughs softly. Don't be. You're merely unfinished business, a loose end I should have tied up decades ago. She moves closer. Tell me, what is it about her that broke through your famous defenses? Her intelligence? Her beauty? Or simply that she reminds you of who you were before I taught you the cost of trust? You overestimate your influence on my life. Do I? Alexandra's smile turns predatory. 20 years of emotional quarantine suggests otherwise. I didn't just take your reputation, Dominic. I took your capacity for connection. Until now. On his phone, a message from Valentina appears. Inside chamber systems. Transfers pausing. Need 4 more minutes. Perhaps you're right, Dominic concedes, intentionally drawing out the conversation. Perhaps I did allow your betrayal to define my approach to relationships. Of course I'm right. You built an empire from the ashes, but you never rebuilt yourself. She studies him with clinical detachment. That's why Valentina represents such a threat to me. Not her technology, not your evidence. What threatens me is the possibility of you becoming whole again. The admission surprises him despite his strategic focus. Why would that threaten you? Because broken, you were predictable, controlled by fear of vulnerability. Her voice lowers. Healing makes you dangerous in ways I can't anticipate. His phone vibrates again. Transfers halted. Evidence package ready, awaiting your signal. It's over, Alexandra, Dominic states, ending the pretense. Your financial attack has been neutralized. Valentina has already penetrated your systems. Alarm flashes across Alexandra's face before she masks it. Impossible. My security is inadequate against her encryption protocol. At this moment, she has access to every Chambers Ventures system. Your client lists, your offshore accounts, your communications with Elliot Nash and Richard Lennox. Alexandra's composure wavers for the first time. You're bluffing. Am I? Dominic activates his phone's speaker. Valentina. I'm here, her voice fills the room. All Chambers systems are currently under our control, Alexandra. The transfers targeting Titan have been halted and reversed. Alexandra's expression hardens into cold fury. Whatever you think you've accomplished is temporary. My technical team will regain control within hours, by which time evidence of your involvement in Harrison's death will have been distributed to federal authorities, financial regulators, and major media outlets, Valentina counters, unless you agree to our terms. Which are, Dominic steps forward, your resignation from Chambers Ventures, complete divestiture of all holdings, withdrawal of all actions against Titan and Kaizen, permanent exile from the financial industry. You're asking me to destroy myself, Alexandra whispers. I'm offering you survival, Dominic corrects. Prison is the alternative. A complex calculation plays across Alexandra's features. The strategic assessment he once admired in her now turned to desperate self-preservation. And if I agree to these terms, you withhold the evidence permanently. The evidence remains our insurance policy. One violation of the agreement triggers immediate distribution. Alexandra's laugh holds no humor. 20 years ago, I underestimated your resilience. Today, I underestimated your capacity for ruthlessness. She turns away, staring out at the storm-lashed city. The student has surpassed the teacher, it seems. Do we have an agreement? Dominic presses. Before she can answer, alarms blare throughout the building. Security monitors activate automatically, showing armed security teams rushing through corridors. "What have you done?" Dominic demands. Alexandra's smile turns vicious. "Insurance policy of my own. Did you really think I'd meet you without contingency plans?" She gestures to the monitors. "My security team is currently securing Ms. Reyes at Titan Tower." She's been quite clever with her cyber interventions, but less careful about her physical safety. Cold dread washes through Dominic. "You're lying." "Am I?" Alexandra activates her own communication system. "Status report." "Target acquired," a professional voice responds. "Proceeding to extraction." The monitor shows Valentina being forced from her workstation by armed men in tactical gear. Dominic watches in horror as she fights back with unexpected skill, disabling one attacker before being subdued by others. "Impressive," Alexandra comments. "She's full of surprises, your new partner, but ultimately outmatched. If they harm her, you'll what? Release the evidence? Destroy me?" Alexandra's voice hardens. "By all means, Dominic, but understand that my instructions to the extraction team are absolute. Any move against me results in her immediate termination. 20 years of calculated control fracture in an instant." For the first time since his destruction, Dominic feels genuine fear, not for himself, but for Valentina. "What do you want?" he asks, the question and admission of vulnerability Alexandra has waited decades to hear. "A simple exchange. Valentina's life for your evidence." She steps closer, savoring her advantage. "All copies, all backups, complete destruction. And Titan? The financial attacks? Consider them collateral damage in our private war." Her smile is merciless. "Your choice is elegantly simple, your company or her life." The Emperor of Wall Street, who has built an existence on strategic calculation and emotional detachment, faces the ultimate test of both. Logic dictates sacrificing Valentina to preserve Titan and the evidence that could finally bring Alexandra to justice. Strategy demands accepting one loss to secure the greater victory. But as he watches Valentina on the monitor, defiant even in capture, Dominic confronts a truth he's denied for 20 years. Some choices transcend strategy. Some connections matter more than empires. "If I agree, how do I know you'll release her?" "You don't?" Alexandra's honesty is brutal. "You'll have to trust me, Dominic." Ironic, isn't it? On the monitor, Valentina looks directly at the camera, somehow knowing he's watching. Despite her situation, her expression conveys not fear, but determination, a silent communication he understands immediately. Don't surrender. Don't compromise. In that moment, something Alexandra destroyed 20 years ago reawakens in Dominic. The capacity to trust not just in himself, but in someone else, in Valentina. "Time is running out," Alexandra presses. "Your evidence for her life." "Last offer." Dominic makes his decision, one that contradicts 20 years of self-preservation. "I need to speak with her, verify she's unharmed." Alexandra considers, then nods. "Patch through the captive," she orders her security team. The monitor switches to a direct feed of Valentina, now secured in what appears to be a service corridor of Titan Tower. "Dominic." Her voice remains steady despite her situation. "Don't give her anything." "Are you hurt?" he asks, ignoring Alexandra's impatient sigh. "I'm fine. More importantly, I've completed the distribution protocol. The evidence is secured." Alexandra stiffens. "What does that mean?" Valentina's smile holds fierce triumph. "It means the evidence now exists in a quantum-encrypted state across multiple servers worldwide. Neither of us can destroy it unilaterally. It requires both our biometric authorizations to either delete or distribute." "Impossible," Alexandra whispers. "Quantum entanglement makes many impossible things possible," Valentina counters. "The evidence is now beyond your reach, beyond Dominic's, beyond anyone's individual control. The strategic implications register on Alexandra's face, the sudden realization that her leverage has evaporated. In creating this failsafe, Valentina has ensured that even if Alexandra kills her, the evidence remains protected rather than vulnerable. You've trapped us all, Alexandra realizes. I've ensured justice remains possible, Valentina corrects. The choice remains yours, Alexandra. End this vendetta now, accept Dominic's terms, or face the consequences of your actions from 20 years ago. Before Alexandra can respond, the monitor shows new movement. James Harlow leading Titan security forces in a coordinated breach of the corridor where Valentina is held. His military background evident in the precision of the operation. In the chaos that follows, Chambers' extraction team is quickly overwhelmed by superior tactics. Your security team needed a distraction to mount their rescue, Dominic explains, watching understanding dawn on Alexandra's face. You provided it by focusing entirely on me. For the first time in their long conflict, Alexandra appears genuinely outmaneuvered. Even if you save her today, this isn't over. Yes, Alexandra, it is. Dominic moves toward the door. The evidence remains in its quantum state, insurance against further attacks from you. But understand this. If you ever threaten Valentina again, every shred of that evidence goes public instantly. No negotiations, no terms. You would risk everything for her, Alexandra observes, more statement than question. The great Dominic Blackwood, finally vulnerable again. Not vulnerable, he corrects. Complete. As he leaves Alexandra standing amidst the ruins of her victory, Dominic experiences an unfamiliar sensation coursing through him, not the clinical satisfaction of strategic triumph that has marked his victories for 20 years, but something more elemental. The fierce protectiveness that drove him to risk everything for Valentina has awakened dormant aspects of himself he thought permanently extinguished by betrayal. The Emperor of Wall Street, who built his reign on calculated precision and emotional detachment, finds himself transformed not by strategy, but by instinct. In choosing Valentina over empire, principle over power, he hasn't shown weakness as he once would have believed. Chapter 8. Empires Reborn. 1 month later, Dominic stands at the familiar windows of his Titan Tower office, watching snow drift across Manhattan's skyline. The crystalline flakes dance past the 78th floor, transforming the usually harsh urban landscape into something softer, more forgiving. Winter has arrived early, wrapping the city in pristine white that seems to mirror the fresh start unfolding in his life. The door opens behind him. He doesn't need to turn to know it's Valentina. Her presence registers in ways that transcend mere sensory perception. The board approved the final restructuring, she announces, moving to stand beside him. Alexandra's resignation from Chambers Ventures is officially complete. The SEC has accepted our evidence regarding Elliot Nash and Richard Lennox without requiring the full Hampton files. And Alexandra herself departed for Geneva this morning. Under the terms of our agreement, she's divested all North American holdings and surrendered her financial licenses. Valentina's reflection in the glass shows her studying his expression. The quantum encrypted evidence remains our insurance policy. Dominic nods once, absorbing the culmination of 20 years' conflict. And the Kaizen acquisition? Not an acquisition anymore. Her smile reflects in the window. The board approved our counter-proposal, strategic partnership with Kaizen maintaining independence while integrating our encryption protocols across Titan systems. It's a better solution than his original plan. Acknowledging Valentina's vision deserves preservation rather than absorption. Another change in his approach that would have been unthinkable months ago. The media speculation about us is intensifying, she adds with amusement. The Emperor of Wall Street and the Quantum Queen, quite the dramatic narrative they're constructing. Let them speculate, he responds, finally turning to face her directly. Some things aren't for public consumption. The month since their confrontation with Alexandra has transformed them both. Professionally, their collaboration has created something unprecedented. Titan Kaizen's integrated security platform, already revolutionizing digital protection across industries. Personally, the walls Dominic maintained for 20 years have given way to something he'd forgotten was possible: genuine partnership. I received the final renovations proposal for Stone Ridge, he continues, referencing his Adirondack estate. The expansion you suggested for the East Wing laboratory space is feasible. Her eyes brighten with characteristic enthusiasm. Perfect. The natural light there will make it an ideal workspace for the quantum computing team developing the neurological preservation techniques. If our medical initiative succeeds with Alexandra's case, we'll need additional research capacity to meet global demand. The domestic implication hangs unspoken between them, his private sanctuary evolving to include her presence, her vision, her future alongside his. Neither rushes to verbalize what both already understand. Some transformations require no declaration to be profound. The helicopter is ready whenever you are, he informs her. The storm system should pass by evening. Weekend retreats to Stone Ridge have become their ritual, private time away from corporate demands and public scrutiny. There, the careful personas they present to the world fall away, allowing exploration of the connection neither anticipated, but both now consider essential. Before we go, there's something I need to show you. Valentina retrieves a secure tablet from her portfolio. My team completed the analysis of Alexandra's personal servers. Most contained what we expected: offshore accounts, blackmail material, the usual weapons of corporate warfare. But not all. Dominic detects the significance in her tone. There was a heavily encrypted file containing medical records. Alexandra has been receiving experimental treatments for early-onset Alzheimer's for the past 3 years. The revelation lands with unexpected impact. Prognosis? Degenerative, accelerating. Her doctors estimate she has perhaps 2 years before significant cognitive decline. Valentina watches his reaction carefully. It explains the timing of her attack. She was facing the loss of her mind, her memories. Her victory, Dominic concludes, understanding blooming. She needed resolution while she could still appreciate it. Does it change anything for you, knowing she's facing this? Dominic considers the question with characteristic thoroughness. It contextualizes her desperation. But no, it doesn't change the necessity of neutralizing the threat she posed. He meets Valentina's gaze directly. Sometimes understanding doesn't require forgiveness. She nods, accepting his perspective without judgment. Another facet of their connection he values increasingly. Unlike the sycophants who populate corporate hierarchies, Valentina never hesitates to challenge him when warranted, nor does she demand he conform to conventional emotional responses. There's something else, he says after a moment, a decision I've made regarding Titan's future. The succession planning? She reads his intention immediately. Yes, the board needs to understand that Titan's long-term stability requires leadership transition beyond me. Not immediately, but within a strategic time frame. For 20 years, Dominic has been synonymous with Titan, the emperor inseparable from his empire. The willingness to envision the company's future beyond his control represents perhaps his most significant evolution. They'll resist, Valentina observes. The markets depend on the perception of your permanent presence. Markets adapt, as do empires. His gaze holds hers. Some legacies are worth more than control. The implication resonates between them. that perhaps Dominic Blackwood's true legacy isn't the trillion-dollar corporation he's built, but his capacity to envision value beyond possession, connection beyond power. As they prepare to depart for Stone Ridge, Dominic receives one final communication, a message from his private investigator monitoring Alexandra's movements. She's been seen entering a medical research facility in Zurich, accompanied by a younger woman bearing striking resemblance. A daughter, Valentina recognizes, reviewing the surveillance photo. "I had no idea Alexandra had a child." "Nor did I." The discovery provides final context to Alexandra's desperate gambit, not just preserving her empire or defeating her enemy, but securing her legacy before disease erases her identity. In that realization, Dominic finds unexpected closure. For 20 years, Alexandra Chambers has been the specter haunting his existence, the betrayal that defined his approach to trust, to connection, to vulnerability. Now, knowing she faces her own mortality, her threat diminished but her desperation understood, he can finally release the last chains binding him to their shared past. In the helicopter ascending above Manhattan's glittering expanse, Dominic reaches for Valentina's hand, a simple gesture that would have been unthinkable months ago. Their fingers intertwine without hesitation or analysis, contact that requires no strategic justification. "What are you thinking?" she asks, studying his profile against the darkening sky. "That empires rise and fall," he answers truthfully, "but some things endure beyond them." Her smile, brilliant, perceptive, unburdened by the calculation that once defined their separate worlds, reflects understanding of what remains unspoken. For 20 years, Dominic Blackwood constructed an empire of wealth and influence, insulated by walls of his own creation. Now, with Valentina beside him, he builds something more valuable, a future defined not by what he controls, but by what he cherishes. As the helicopter banks north toward the mountains, leaving the city's complexity behind, Dominic studies the secure tablet containing Alexandra Chambers' signed capitulation agreement. The document represents not just victory in their 20-year conflict, but the closing of a painful chapter. "What will you do with it?" Valentina asks, noting his contemplation of the agreement. "File it away," he answers. "Historical record rather than active threat." The choice to preserve rather than weaponize his victory represents the first step in a new direction, one where past wounds no longer dictate future actions. Business publications will report the corporate outcome, analyze the strategic implications, quantify the financial impact, but they'll miss the more profound transformation occurring beyond balance sheets and board decisions. For the Emperor of Wall Street, the greatest victory isn't Alexandra's defeat, but his own liberation from the prison, her betrayal built 20 years ago. Chapter 9: Quantum Entanglement. Spring transforms the Adirondack landscape surrounding Stone Ridge. Snow has retreated from the property, wildflowers now emerging in vibrant bursts of color. The modernist structure itself has undergone its own transformation, the formerly austere interiors now bearing unmistakable evidence of shared lives. Technical journals rest beside classic literature on once empty bookshelves. Two distinct coffee cups sit on the kitchen counter. A silk robe draped across a chaise. The Steinway piano, once merely decorative, now shows signs of regular use. Dominic moves through the early morning stillness in casual attire, another evolution from his rigidly formal past. He pauses by a newly installed photograph, himself and Valentina at the Titan Kaizen partnership announcement, her brilliant smile softening his usually stern expression. 6 months have changed more than corporate structures. In the newly constructed East Wing laboratory, he finds Valentina already working, surrounded by holographic displays of quantum computational models. Wearing simple leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, hair casually swept up, She's completely absorbed in adjusting variables that ripple through projection fields like digital current. You're staring, she notes without looking up. Observing, he corrects, approaching with coffee prepared as she prefers. There's a difference. She accepts the cup, finally turning to meet his gaze. The difference being? Observation requires appreciation. Staring is merely looking. Her smile, a sight once foreign in this house, brightens the space. Their relationship has developed without declarations or conventional milestones. Like the quantum phenomena Valentina studies, their connection simply exists, observable through effects rather than direct examination. The Zurich team sent their preliminary results, she says, gesturing to the complex molecular structures. The quantum application in neurological mapping is exceeding projections. We're achieving 87% fidelity in memory structure preservation. Dominic studies the data with genuine interest. The Titan Kaizen Medical Initiative represents their most ambitious collaboration, applying Valentina's quantum principles to neurological research, particularly focusing on memory degenerative conditions. But there's a complication, she continues, her expression turning serious. Alexandra's condition is accelerating. Stage 3 cognitive decline with significant deterioration in autobiographical memory centers. And, Dominic prompts, sensing there's more. Her daughter Catherine has received threats. Valentina shows him surveillance photos. These were taken outside the Swiss clinic yesterday. Former Chambers Ventures executives who benefit from arrangements Alexandra made, arrangements she might remember and change if our treatment works. They want her to forget, Dominic concludes, or die before she can remember key details. Catherine has requested urgent security assistance and accelerated treatment protocol. 6 months since their confrontation, Alexandra remains a complex shadow in their narrative. Once his greatest enemy, now a fading mind they're racing to preserve, not out of forgiveness, but something more complex. The decision to extend experimental treatment had been Valentina's suggestion. Dominic's eventual agreement, perhaps his most significant personal evolution. Grant the security detail, he decides, and approve the accelerated treatment protocol, but with complete ethical firewall between her case and the broader initiative. Valentina watches him carefully, still protecting Titan from potential blowback, protecting our work from being dismissed as personal vendetta rather than scientific breakthrough, he corrects. Alexandra's former allies have significant media influence. Yet you're still helping someone who tried to destroy you. Twice. Dominic's expression reveals the complexity of his motivation. Perhaps ensuring she remembers her crimes is its own form of justice. Their attention returns to the quantum models, intricate mathematical representations of memory formation, floating like ghostly architecture. The project has evolved beyond corporate strategy into something more meaningful for both. For Valentina, vindicating her father's discredited research. For Dominic, perhaps unconsciously, ensuring no one else experiences the obliteration Alexandra now faces, the loss of self through memory's dissolution. The board approved the succession framework, he mentions as they move to the terrace for breakfast. The 3-year transition timeline satisfied concerns about market stability. Her expression shows appropriate appreciation for this milestone. The emperor willingly creating process for eventual abdication represents evolution few believed possible. And James Harlow's appointment as chief operating officer, approved without reservation. His performance during the Alexandra crisis established credibility beyond security operations. The mountain view spreads before them, spring's renewal evident in every direction. Dominic observes how comfortably they've established these shared rituals, actual conversation, actual presence, replacing his former solitary efficiency. The Reyes Blackwood Foundation structure is finalized, Valentina says. 300 million initial funding, completely independent governance from either company. And the research applications. Over 300 submissions already, brilliant minds from 17 countries, many without institutional backing. Her eyes reflect genuine passion, including a young physicist from Madrid whose theories mirror my father's early work, the research that was systematically discredited. The foundation represents something beyond a typical corporate philanthropy, a means of correcting historical wrongs while creating future possibilities, supporting researchers facing the same institutional resistance that destroyed Valentina's father and nearly destroyed Dominic before he rebuilt himself. The medical initiative should be announced next month, he suggests, once the first clinical results are peer-reviewed. As they discuss particulars, Dominic's secure phone signals an incoming message. James Harlow, whose communications always receive priority. A significant development, Dominic explains after reviewing the message. The Swiss clinic security team intercepted two former Chambers executives attempting to access Alexandra's treatment facility. They were carrying modified pharmaceuticals designed to accelerate cognitive decline. They were going to poison her? Valentina asks, clearly disturbed despite Alexandra's history. Apparently, her deterioration wasn't progressing quickly enough for their purposes. His expression reveals no satisfaction at his former enemy's vulnerability. They're being questioned by Swiss authorities. James is coordinating with their security services. If they're willing to take such risks, whatever Alexandra might remember must be extraordinarily damaging, Valentina observes, or valuable. Dominic's analytical mind connects possibilities. The timing suggests it's related to the Meridian Holdings acquisition, Alexandra's final major transaction before cognitive symptoms appeared. The Russian Energy Consortium. Valentina follows his thinking immediately. Catherine mentioned her mother seemed particularly anxious about document access related to that deal. This shared intellectual synchronicity, the ability to follow each other's complex reasoning without explanation, represents another layer of their connection. Different backgrounds, different domains, identical analytical capacity. We should accelerate the treatment protocol, Valentina suggests. If her memories could expose criminal activity beyond what we already documented, it becomes a matter of justice rather than personal resolution, Dominic finishes. I agree. As they discuss next steps, a comfortable silence eventually falls between them. Dominic finds himself studying Valentina with an appreciation that would have been foreign to him a year ago, not merely for her brilliance or beauty, but for how fundamentally she's altered his existence. You're staring again, she notes with gentle humor. Contemplating, he corrects, the improbability of quantum entanglement. Improbable only to those who don't understand the underlying principles, she responds, immediately grasping his metaphor. Once certain particles interact, their states remain permanently connected regardless of distance, their properties correlated across any separation. A scientific rather than romantic observation. Science often explains what poetry merely describes. Her gaze holds his directly. We've been entangled since our first meeting, Dominic. Everything since has simply been the natural expression of that connection. For a man who once defined himself through strategic calculation and emotional distance, such a moment should trigger analysis or caution. Instead, Dominic experiences clarity that transcends rational assessment, the recognition that some connections represent not vulnerability but completion. I've been considering formalizing our arrangement, he says with characteristic directness. Personal or professional, she asks with equal directness. Both. One seems inseparable from the other at this point. Her smile combines certainty with characteristic precision. I was waiting for you to reach the logical conclusion. Before your Tokyo conference, I think, he suggests. Private rather than public, authentic rather than performative. Precisely. Her expression brightens with genuine pleasure at his understanding, though a small celebration afterward might be appropriate. James would be disappointed to be excluded. Limited guest list, he qualifies immediately, carefully curated. Their shared laughter, another sound once foreign to Stone Ridge, echoes across the terrace. Spring sunshine illuminates two people who have discovered that empires mean little without someone to share them, that power achieves purpose through connection rather than control. As they return to their respective work, Valentina to her quantum research, Dominic to Titan's global operations, they move with the synchronized awareness that needs no constant affirmation. Different domains, different strengths, identical commitment to what they're building together. The Emperor of Wall Street, who once defined strength as independence from all emotional attachment, has discovered the most revolutionary principle of his career, that true power emerges not from isolation, but from the right connection. Chapter 10. The rain of two Manhattan's skyline glitters against the twilight sky. 1 year to the day since Alexandra's defeat, the city appears transformed, or perhaps it's merely the man observing it who has changed. Dominic adjusts his tuxedo as he stands on Titan Tower's helipad. The media has christened him half of the Quantum Dynasty, the unexpected partnership that has revolutionized both finance and technology in 12 months. The sleek helicopter approaches, touching down precisely on schedule. Valentina emerges, resplendent in midnight blue that captures light with every movement, no longer simply the quantum queen, but his wife, his partner, his equal. The Tokyo contracts are finalized, she announces triumphantly. 8 billion exclusive implementation rights and priority access to their quantum research division. Dominic takes her hand, the platinum band catching the fading sunlight. Your presentation must have been exceptional. The technology spoke for itself. They move toward the private elevator. Tonight marks the official launch of the Reyes Blackwood Foundation, their most personal collaboration and perhaps most significant legacy. 800 carefully selected guests await at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, transformed for one night into a showcase of the Foundation's mission. James called from Zurich, Dominic mentions as they descend. 3 patients showing significant memory stabilization after implementing the quantum protein therapy. Her expression brightens. And Alexandra? Some response, though limited. Her daughter reports she recognized her this morning. Briefly, but definitively. The news carries poignancy, their greatest collaborative achievement emerging too late to fully help the woman whose actions inadvertently catalyzed their meeting. A beginning, at least, Valentina acknowledges. The limousine glides through Manhattan streets. Through tinted windows, they observe a city unchanged, yet utterly transformed by their perspective. The market response to the succession announcement was exactly as you predicted, he notes. Titan stock up 4%, with analysts citing strategic evolution rather than concerning disruption. The Emperor's planned abdication causing celebration rather than chaos, she observes with subtle humor. The decision to accelerate his transition from CEO to executive chairman had surprised many. The man who once defined himself entirely through corporate dominance has discovered priorities beyond control. They arrive at the museum's classical facade, illuminated dramatically for the evening. As they emerge, camera flashes capture them momentarily, no longer separate entities but a singular force. They move through the grand entrance into the transformed Great Hall. The assembly represents unprecedented concentration of influence, $5 trillion of combined corporate value in one room. At precisely 9 o'clock, they take the stage in the museum's Temple of Dendor. Massive screens display the Reyes Blackwood Foundation's distinctive logo, a stylized quantum particle encircling a classic column. Good evening, Dominic begins, his voice carrying authority now tempered with genuine purpose. 1 year ago, Valentina and I recognized an opportunity that transcended traditional corporate boundaries. Valentina continues seamlessly, their presentation reflecting their personal synchronicity. The Ray's Blackwood Foundation commits $1 billion to quantum applications in neurological preservation and repair. This initiative will expand from our initial pilot program to support over 30 specialized research teams across 17 countries. 3 patients in our Zurich trial have demonstrated measurable memory stabilization after just 60 days of treatment, Dominic explains, as complex neurological imaging appears on screen. Regions previously showing accelerated deterioration now exhibiting renewed connectivity. As the formal presentation concludes, Dominic and Valentina slip away to a private gallery where their special guest awaits. Alexandra Chambers sits in a wheelchair, attended by a nurse and her daughter, Catherine. At 63, she appears significantly older, her condition accelerating the aging process, her once sharp features softened by cognitive decline. Dominic, she acknowledges, her voice weaker but still carrying echoes of her former precision. And the brilliant Ms. Reyes, or should I say Mrs. Blackwood now? Dr. Reyes Blackwood, technically, Valentina corrects gently. How are you feeling, Alexandra? Philosophical. Ironic that my greatest enemy would become my last hope for remembering who I am. Dominic studies her without the hatred that once would have consumed him. The treatment is showing promise. Dr. Schaefer reports improvement in your recognition patterns. Temporary reprieves in a losing battle. Alexandra's clarity suggests one of her better days. But I appreciate the effort, regardless of motivation. Catherine, a younger version of Alexandra with softer features, interjects, Mother has been able to recall specific memories from her childhood this week, names and faces that had been lost for months. I wanted to thank you, Alexandra says during a moment when Catherine steps away. Not for the treatment, though that too, but for protecting my daughter from the consequences of my actions. The immunity granted to Catherine had been Valentina's suggestion, Dominic's agreement perhaps his most significant personal evolution. Catherine bears no responsibility for choices made before she had agency, Dominic responds simply. A generosity I wouldn't have shown in your position, Alexandra acknowledges with characteristic directness. A flash of her former sharpness breaks through the cognitive fog. You've seen what most haven't, Doctor. Reyes Blackwood. Behind his carefully constructed walls, past the mythology of the Emperor. You've accessed what I helped bury 20 years ago. And what's that? Valentina asks. His capacity for mercy. Alexandra's gaze shifts between them. Use it wisely. It's a vulnerability I would have exploited. That's the difference between us, Valentina responds without hostility. I don't see compassion as weakness to exploit. I see it as strength to nurture. As midnight approaches, the formal portion of the evening concludes. Guests depart with appropriate expressions of support, leaving Dominic and Valentina momentarily alone in the grand temple of Dendur. Successful evening, he observes, looking around at the ancient temple, a fitting metaphor for transformation without destruction. They exit to find Manhattan transformed by an unexpected weather phenomenon, crystalline snowflakes drifting among autumn leaves, creating a tableau of seasons in transition. Their waiting limousine idles, but Dominic suggests they walk instead. Central Park is just across the street, he explains. I find myself wanting a moment before returning home. They cross Fifth Avenue together, entering the park where paths glitter with fresh snow under ornate lamps. Their security detail maintains discreet distance. 1 year, Valentina observes as they walk arm in arm. It feels simultaneously longer and shorter. Time elasticity, Dominic agrees. the phenomenon of significant periods defying conventional measurement. Alexandra seemed genuinely improved, Valentina notes as they reach the Bethesda fountain, its angel figure dusted with snow. Yes, though the prognosis remains ultimately unchanged. Dominic's expression reveals complexity beyond simple satisfaction or regret. There's certain symmetry, her memories preserved through your breakthrough, the very innovation she feared when she attacked us. I've been considering what comes after the medical initiative succeeds, Dominic says after a comfortable silence. Beyond treatments and cures. What specifically are you thinking? Legacy transformation, using our influence to reshape how innovation itself is valued and funded. His expression reflects the depth of his thinking. Not just supporting individual researchers, but fundamentally changing the systems that nearly destroyed your father and me. The audacity of the concept is characteristically Dominic, but with purpose that transcends mere business domination, using their unprecedented combined influence to challenge entrenched power structures, creating pathways where brilliance alone determines success. Snow continues to fall gently around them, catching in Valentina's dark hair like scattered diamonds. As they return to the waiting limousine, Manhattan spread before them like a glittering realm of possibility. They move with the synchronized awareness that needs no words or constant affirmation. The Emperor has not merely found his Empress, he has discovered something he never thought possible, a partnership where vulnerability creates strength rather than weakness, where sharing power multiplies it rather than divides it. The financial media will continue calling them the Quantum Dynasty, describing their unprecedented combination of financial and technological influence. But privately, they recognize something simpler and more profound has emerged from their unlikely meeting. Not empire, but partnership. Not conquest, but creation. And in that transformation, Dominic Blackwood has discovered the ultimate truth of power. It means nothing without someone to share it with.